recording. Well, welcome everyone to our Colorado Proud webinar today. This is going to be exciting. We have some amazing experts to join us. We're focused on co-manufacturing, and we're looking at innovation in a risk-averse economy. So on today, we have the following brands and companies: Allie Brimlow with Fresca Foods, and pardon me if I don't say your name properly, Jeff Schmidt with Awakened Foods, TJ McIntyre with Bobo's, Greg Powers with Boulder Organic Foods, Ben Frohlichstein from Capello's, and our moderator today is Bart Taylor from Moss Adams. And just a reminder to everybody, when our speakers are speaking, please just mute your microphones. It helps eliminate background noise. And we want questions, we welcome them. So feel free to raise your hand or type it into the chat, and we'll be monitoring that and make sure it's addressed. And throughout the presentations, we will be asking for questions. So don't hesitate. We really want to hear from all of you. And if you have any questions after the webinar and you'd like to be connected with any of these experts, feel free to email me, Barb Howe. I'm at barb.howe@state.co.us. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bart, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Hey, Barb, thanks so much for inviting us to be part of the Colorado Proud programming that you guys are putting together. You do such great work. I think all of us were more than enthusiastic just to lean into your efforts to help Colorado's food and beverage ecosystem grow. And thanks for the invite. As Barb said, I'm Bart Taylor. I'm with Moss Adams. And I know many of you through my past life too at Company Week. I founded Company Week Media back in 2013 to report on the local and regional manufacturing economy. And it shouldn't go without saying that the reason that I really got into this was the food ecosystem that had emerged in Boulder County, not only through brands, but co-manufacturers like Allie's company, Fresca. And that started me on this journey, which has been an incredible journey and exploration of everything manufacturing in Colorado and the Rocky Mountains. I ended up selling the media business Company Week back in 2020. I had moved down to Texas and launched the Texas Manufacturing Report, which was the fifth in a series of state-level reports that we did. Ended up selling the company and moving back to Colorado, actually. And I ended up parting ways with, as all of us do who are entrepreneurs, you never know what your journey entails once you hang a shingle out and then sell your company. Probably all of you know as well as I do, it becomes quite a journey, an unexpected journey. But for me, it ended fortuitously. Moss Adams had been a company that supported my work throughout our footprint, and I had an opportunity to join Moss Adams and continue to work with manufacturers just from a different perch, and it's been really great. I'll talk about a little bit more about the company, when we're done here. But for me, it also meant an opportunity to continue to be a voice in the market and continue to bring the community together. And today, I think if we're doing anything, it's continuing to add transparency and openness to the food and beverage production ecosystem, to connect people with company, to connect brands and with right-sized manufacturing. That is our ultimate goal here in this series. And we've already started. In fact, many of you attended the Co-Manufacturing Summit Part 1 in person back in January. This is a follow-up to that, and we anticipate more to come. So this is the next conversation in a dialogue that we anticipate continuing, with our goal to help companies manufacture things in the U.S. and specifically things locally and regionally. Food is the tip of the U.S. manufacturing spear, which I'll touch on just in a minute. But today, we're going to follow up on what we did in the in-person version and continue the conversation about how brands, co-manufacturers work together, what the market conditions hold by way of either barriers or opportunities to bring products to market. And again, our mission is to help create a more transparent ecosystem. And by that, the innovation goes to market theme is what theme of the day is. I guess another way of saying that is, for you brands out there and co-manufacturers, what are you making? How are you making it, and why? And I think that set of questions, and the discussion that we'll have by way of product plans and manufacturing strategies says everything about the state of the market, where consumer sentiment is, where manufacturing opportunities are, where challenges are, and it gives us an entry and kind of a window into the market that we're excited to explore today. Our long-range goal today, or our immediate goal rather, is to help Colorado Proud members on your journey. So if you're not with us today and you're enjoying this content digitally, we also, as Barb mentioned, welcome you to reach out to us when you do interact with this content. We'll make sure that all of the experts that we have on the panel today are available to you. And I just want to, speaking of the experts, do a quick round the horn and introduce who's with us today and who will be talking. They can say just a quick hello. And then I'm going to share some data and then come back and we'll begin the conversation. So I'd like to welcome TJ McIntyre with Bobo's. TJ, are you out there and live?
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Bart. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Colorado manufacturer. Thanks for including me.
You bet. Thanks for taking time. Allie Brimlow with Fresca Foods. Allie.
Hi there, everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks for having us, Bart.
You're welcome. Greg Powers with Boulder Organic Foods. Greg, are you there?
I am. Nice to be here. Thanks, Bart.
Yeah, thanks for taking time. Jeff Schmidgall with Awaken Foods. Jeff.
Hey, everybody.
Awesome. And Ben Frolickstein. So I've already mispronounced his name once. I told him I would do that probably several times today. So Ben, thanks for bearing with me, man. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. So what I did last time is we just talked about some statistics that provide some national context for Colorado's food ecosystem. And I thought I would just revisit those numbers today very quickly to give us some content before we jump into this notion of how innovation is going to market. I would start simply by saying probably sometime this year, if it hasn't happened already, Colorado just passed over 3 million employees. And the state is obviously one of the nation's fastest growing. Year over year, we're about 5% growth in employment, and that ranks us about 12th, 13th, 14th nationally, somewhere in that neighborhood. Our 5-year growth from a workforce standpoint is about 10th nationally. So we continue to be in the 15-year growth curve is even more impressive. We're like 4th in the country in terms of jobs. As it relates to food manufacturing, I think it's often a surprise for even those who are working in the industry to understand how significant food manufacturing is in the manufacturing ecosystem here. Colorado food and beverage makers are by far the leading manufacturing employees in the state. We quoted some numbers at the in-person event where the 2022 numbers, the Colorado food manufacturing ecosystem employed just about 25,000 employees. Now, the Metro EDC, who also does business cluster studies, estimates today that number is about 50,000 total food jobs alone, and about 60% of those are in production. So we can estimate today that we are between 30 and 35,000 employees in manufacturing in Colorado's food and beverage ecosystem. And that ranks us about 27th nationally for food manufacturing. It's obviously the number one we're number one in the state in manufacturing jobs. And when you consider that there's about 13 million employees now total in U.S. manufacturing, we have a nice little growing percentage of that. And we're going to talk about the trends in that. They're different a little bit in food and beverage, and we'll come back and talk about those. As we look at beverage, the 2022 total jobs is about 9,500 total jobs in beverage manufacturing. And where food manufacturing continues if it hasn't flattened out a little bit, it's going to still continue to grow even incrementally compared to the rapid growth in the past. The beverage sector is under pressure, more significant pressure than the food industry. That job number, 9,500 employees in the beverage manufacturing ecosystem, probably will be revised downward. There's a significant beer recession underway. As many of you read about, if you are in manufacturing, you know some of the beverage manufacturers, including the craft beer sector, has been struggling. There's a lot of consolidation in that market, probably an overbuilt production environment. So we see the beverage industry under a little bit of strain. We'll talk more about that. From a wage standpoint, Colorado food wages, manufacturing wages land between $60,000 and $70,000 per year on average. And if anybody, including all of our guests who are panelists today and all of you listening in, you probably know that there's inflation pressure around that number. Wages are going up in the state. I think it's a comfortable statement to say Colorado is increasingly a higher cost manufacturing ecosystem. And we're going to talk more about the impact of finance and capital availability on the market trajectory today. So we see pressure on manufacturing wages to go up. Beverage manufacturing wages are a little bit less. They average $58,000 per year. And that's those are negative numbers year over year. So again, the craft beverage sector today is facing some pretty stiff headwinds, and we might touch on those a little bit as we talk about co-manufacturing in the food sector. So with that, I want to just start our conversation. I think as we look back at this last 5-year period, we've kind of seen it all. Hockey stick growth, late in the tens decade, a pandemic, a post-pandemic shadow that I think all of us are dealing with. And TJ, for you and Bobo's, I mean, you guys have had a nice run, but it feels like, the go-go times of the 2017, 18, 19s feel like a long way away. I'm wondering if you might just kind of give us your big picture assessment of the state of the market, and then I'll ask all of you to do that through the lens of the last 5 years. How are things now, and how's your journey been?
Sure. We continue to have a lot of success. Our growth rate is going to be higher in 2024 on a percentage basis than it ever has. We're going to grow around 70% this year. And that puts us in a whole nother stratosphere. And we have successfully crossed into more mainstream appeal. And Walmart and Sam's and Costco are driving that growth. But as we succeed there, we are increasing our velocities everywhere else, because Costco in particular is an amazing trial vehicle. Consumers that buy a very large pack of your product are not always going to want to buy that quantity. And so they fill in with the smaller versions that we sell at Whole Foods and Kroger and the like. As far as the overall food industry, to try to answer your question succinctly, I believe that the natural products industry is dramatically overbuilt. There were transactions that were taking place between 2010 and maybe 2019, where entrepreneurs were being rewarded for risk and for innovation and creating brands, and the acquirers didn't succeed after post-acquisition. I mean, to put it simply. And what is necessary now to build a company that somebody else is going to acquire is size and profitability. And those thresholds are, debated, but you have to be profitable. I believe you have to be meaningfully profitable, and you have to be large. And what I don't believe in is hot trends that get flooded with Me Too brands that have not stood the test of time. Because something becomes a bestseller at Whole Foods on its end cap, and it's the best product that they've sold, on summer end caps or back to school end caps, that doesn't mean that consumers are going to buy that in 2 years, buy that category, let alone that brand. What is ignored is that, the need for things to be time tested. And there's a lot of money that wants to be placed in the industry. And forgive me, I'm jumping around a little bit, but there's a lot of unplaced capital that's in venture capital and private equity. And those managers don't get paid until they write the check. And so they're under pressure to write the check. And you walk Expo, thousands of booths, gorgeous booths, really good branding, right? There's like 10, 15 transactions a year. So it's going to take 100 years for this money to get paid back if you just look at it statistically. And so where we've achieved our success and where I look at success of other businesses is the products that have successfully crossed over, and maybe not the specific brand, but the product category. Where is their tonnage? And that's where I think brands need to focus on playing. And the niche, too reliant on claims on the product are the products that are likely going to face the most risk. Just to pick on a couple of categories, vegan jerky. Not a bad idea. Vegans want to have that kind of a snack occasion. That's never going to be a big idea. But beef jerky has been around for 2 centuries. I think people are going to continue to eat that. I think that things like pre and probiotic, really good for your belly, all kinds of science that backs it up. Can you point to 2 or 3 categories with that benefit at Walmart, the biggest retailer, where, yeah, that's a really great benefit that America on a large scale adopts. And so instead, because we see Olipop and Poppy booming, and then we have 100 other companies that are following them, I don't think that those other 100 companies or 20, whatever it is, they're not going to get there. And we saw the same thing with kombucha. Right? I mean, how many kombuchas followed GTs, and how many have transacted? Like 2, and that's probably going to be it. And so, I'll just close this first statement here by saying that, like, where I think the money is in this business is in chocolate and vanilla and strawberry. Is in, like, what did I grow up eating that is still
Tried and
relevant?
true.
That like, if I look in my refrigerator, if I look in my pantry or my friend's refrigerator and pantry, there's a category of products that are just always in there and always getting rotated. And if I can make those a little bit better, like what Ben's doing at Capello's, if I can make those a little bit better, then I stand a chance. But if I'm going to try to invent something totally new and think that the whole world is going to change behavior because I've got a really cool brand, I died on that field with a yerba mate company years ago. And, I'm going to sell a version of chocolate chip cookies for the rest of my life.
Yeah. It feels like that retreat from the bleeding edge, if I could put words in your mouth, something that Ali and I talked about in an article I just wrote, is very real. And those brands don't seem, those products probably will struggle getting financing as well. Greg, I was going to jump in here with you. I mean, you're also a brand, you're marketing, you're making and marketing your own product in addition to doing some co-manufacturing. You want to weigh in on where we've been and where we're going through the products that you're bringing to market?
Sure. Yeah. First, amen to everything TJ just said. It's nice to hear that verbalized and agree with all of it. Our category has been the fresh deli. for the last 15 plus years. And we certainly saw a significant impact during the pandemic that hit our category by about 30 to 35%, which was a pretty big hit. People just stopped buying fresh foods, back in 2020, 2021. Since then, we have seen a pretty solid rebound. And that is accelerating right now for us, specifically because not only are consumers looking for fresh meal options again and comfort foods, but we see some of our larger competitors stumbling a little bit. And I think it is tied to what TJ was just describing, with some companies that are focused too much on what the it item is or the it concept, or just trying to push their innovation a little too far outside of the mainstream. And that has created a lot of opportunity for us in deli, where we've been averaging over 100% growth for the last 3 years, which is very significant. We're growing so fast, that is our biggest problem right now, is trying to manage that growth. And it's because of those opportunities in the marketplace that are becoming available. And it is with a lot of these larger retailers. It's a very similar list to what TJ just explained. And that is, like I said, it's due to, I think, companies that got distracted from what their core product set is or what the real value is to their customers. And they ended up stumbling with some of these bigger accounts, who then come to smaller players like us and say, hey, these guys are messing up. Can you step in? And that's exactly what we're doing. So we've had this very interesting, evolution over the past several years, where a lot of our branded work has been pretty focused on the club channel, I would say, overall, along with some retail. But our private label side has just exploded. And we are now working with the largest accounts in the country and just trying to absorb and take on as much as we can, as quickly as we can, before that market dynamic shifts again. Because we know those big customers, those big competitors are going to come back and try to take back their market share. But right now, we're trying to expand as quickly as we can, do it thoughtfully while maintaining our quality and our margins, and hopefully then hang on for our life as we as we continue to go through this process. So it's been a very exciting development, certainly over the last 5 years. And honestly, I would not have predicted it to be as hockey stick-ish as it has been, considering where we were 5 years ago during the pandemic lows. But it's been very dynamic. And like I said, I echo everything TJ is saying, and we're trying to focus a lot of our efforts on the fundamentals right now.
Just a quick question before I move on to some other folks on the panel. Is your product mix similar? I mean, does it have anything to do with the products you were making or bringing to market?
Yeah, so it is changing right now. We have always been a fresh soup company predominantly, and that's certainly our bread and butter. But as we are working with the Walmarts and the Costcos, they're asking us for innovation. And our key focus has really been on grab and go style meals. For people that are either returning to the office or looking for, easily accessible meal options that are also healthy. And so we do have a very specific kettle cook capability that lends itself pretty well to producing those types of products. And so we are applying some innovation and launching those products actually in the next month with some of those larger accounts. So we are trying to diversify that a little bit and take advantage of these opportunities as they present themselves.
Thanks for that, Greg. Ben, I'm just going to stick with brands here for a second, if that's all right. You want to jump in and talk about where you're at from a product standpoint, and whether any of these issues that TJ and Greg are bringing up resonate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think spot on to a couple of things that both TJ and Greg highlighted. And I think from my perspective in our journey at Capel's over the last 15 years, we really got to kind of capture some of the tailwinds of, the better for you products and folks looking for more functional products to solve certain issues in their lives, whether it was celiac or autoimmune. But to TJ's point, I think that there's only so much scale you can get on some of that. And at the end of the day, the conventional shopper does just want something that's just going to be a little bit better for them. For better or for worse from my lens. And And I think part of that too is very much value driven, and a lot of the brands in the natural, products channel are more premium brands like Capello's, and not something that the average American consumer is going to make a reach for a $10 box of pasta or $14 pizza. Even if there's a functional component to it, it's just a little bit without out of reach. And some of the learnings that we've experienced tremendous growth during the pandemic, specifically just from being in the freezer and folks just loading up their freezers on these big grocery runs. And so now, as our business is kind of normalizing from a growth rate, we're looking more in the rear view and trying to understand, okay, what worked, what hasn't worked. And last year we launched a line of gluten-free biscuits, which is one of the more I'd say approachable products from a price point, but also in terms of just the taste, texture, and kind of experience folks are having with these biscuits. It hits like a real, hits home like a real buttermilk biscuit. It's not functionally driven, it's taste driven, it's experience driven. And the learnings that we've gotten from that have really kind of opened our eyes to what consumers, might be continuing to look for or seeking when they're shopping. And I think too about what TJ talked about a little bit with Costco, and the some of the success that they're having there. And I think about my own household and how we always have a big box of Bobos, whether they're the little mini bites or the PB and J's from Costco at the house. And it's because it's a great value, it's a great product, and I think more and more consumers, as they're tightening up the wallets and spending habits, are looking for products like that, and not on the taste and kind of experience, and feel like, I got this better for you product. I didn't really enjoy it, and I spent $12 on that. And I just think the
Right.
ability, for that to continue, and have private equity or venture capital kind of cover up for some of the back end sins of that are over. So
Biscuits, the ultimate comfort food, the ultimate familiar food, something that probably resonates with all of you, including you, Allie. I mean, as you look from a co-manufacturing standpoint, I assume all of this resonates. Tell us about the types of products, for example, that are coming through the door at Fresca.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you on the phone who might not be familiar with Fresca Foods, since we're one of the kind of behind the scenes players, we are a natural and organic contract manufacturer in Louisville, Colorado. We work with some pretty awesome national distribution brands, typically, as well as some of the world's largest food companies, all in the natural and organic space. And we're multi-platform, so we make cookies, crackers, bars, granola, cereal, all sorts of different product types. And we've been around for over 20 years and do a lot on the innovation side as well. So we do product development, ideation workshops, all sorts of stuff. So thank you, Bart, for having us on the panel today. And absolutely agree with everything that everybody shared so far. I think the trends that we see, we get hundreds of inquiries every month for companies that want to work with us, and which is a great place to be in. And it also gives us this unique perspective on what people are asking for. And last time you and I talked, Bart, we kind of talked about the innovation cycle and how, in my time in the industry, you see innovation go through these cycles where sometimes it's like full steam ahead, very innovative, very bleeding edge, unique, pushing the envelope. And then when in doubt, it always kind of swings back to be more conservative and more safe and slowing down a little bit. And I definitely feel like over the pandemic, we saw that cycle complete itself, where pandemic happened and innovation, at least immediately, very much screeched to a halt because everybody was like, whoa, what's happening? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, now we're late and we have to deliver innovation yesterday. So pedal to the metal, let's go. We got a ton of requests for innovation coming out of the pandemic. But then consumers got hit with global uncertainty and an economy and inflation and all of these really tough external factors that kind of leaves us where we are today, which is an innovation landscape that is very safe, is the word we use at Fresca. It's very comfortable and familiar and not all that breakthrough. But that's okay. I mean, like when I was at Expo West, we were trend spotting, and my biggest takeaway was just keep it simple, make sure it tastes really good, and make sure you're delivering value. If you can do those three things, you're in a good spot. And I think every single brand on the call today delivers on those three things. So that's, I think, really where we've been pushed as a contract manufacturing partner to keep it simple, deliver value, especially value. And that's when I know we'll talk more about the financials later in the panel, but that's definitely something that we're facing, is that, you know, ingredients are getting more expensive, labor's getting more expensive, and the consumers, the retailers, the brands all need their costs to be going down. So managing those two conflicting factors and pressures is definitely a challenge that I know we all on this panel are experiencing every single day. So that's definitely something that, you know, we get requests now, so more so these days on, hey, what can we do on your existing equipment? We don't want to look into any capital investment. We don't want to talk about new packaging. What do you already have? What can we use? Let's kind of fit the innovation into the existing assets rather than, can you build a system around this new idea, which is what historically Fresca did a lot of that, build systems around ideas. Today, we're much more focused on, okay, we've got a granola system, which we don't even call our granola system sometimes, because really it's a slurry and a dry mix and a baking and then a depositing into a pouch. Like, what else could we do with that? Could we do mixes? Could we do stack mix, granola, oatmeals, like dry things? You know, what else could we do with our existing assets? So that to me has been the biggest shift in the last year or two, is just this different approach of innovation that is very focused on profitability and very focused on leveraging what's already, you know, within a co-man's capabilities. And I know, Greg, you mentioned like, okay, we have these kettles. What else can we do with kettles? I very much empathize with that mindset, because we've done a lot of that in recent years. And then innovation has been very much like, you know, take a bar but add a drizzle to it, or add a footer, and instead of let's make vegetable jerky, which was more of a thing of 2019, 2020. Which is still great. I mean, I still consider that innovation. I think it's definitely meeting the consumers where they are right now in this time of great uncertainty. To deliver familiarity, comfort, and value is really, there's a winning formula there, and one that, to TJ's point, I think will last.
Well, Jeff, I'm like almost secretly hoping for you to come out and say, no. I mean, we're doing all this interesting stuff at Awaken Foods. You just got to come knock on our door, but maybe not. Does this sound familiar to you? What's coming through the door at Awaken Foods? Might be on mute, Jeff.
It sounds very familiar. We certainly used to get a lot of the different creative ideas, and quite frankly, those have a place out there, just not at scale, and don't expect it to be at scale. You know, so you can launch your creative product, just be fully aware this may be more of a lifestyle business, and, you know, generate all the process around it to be sustainable at that smaller scale. I mean, we started the Be Fine Foods company based on just individual, like, my brother-in-law and myself needed a food that fit our lifestyle, our dietary restrictions, and no one else was making anything. And so there's a small segment that's always going to be out there that needs some sort of niche style of product. Just don't expect to, you know, be selling it to General Mills someday. And there's co-manufacturing solutions out there to a degree for those smaller products. But no, absolutely, we see a lot of staple products coming through our place, and then just with small tweaks. Certainly one trend out there that I think has a lot of staying power, and that's less processing on ingredients. Let's steer away from the ultra processed, which has a lot of news going on in the food industry right now. So rather than use, say, a seed oil, can we use an avocado oil that goes through less processing in its production? Could be, an example that we see quite a bit of. Our company is based out of Loveland, Colorado. We have 3 different production lines: cookies, extruded puffs, and granolas. So nice staple products. And we are a fully gluten-free facility. So most of our inquiries come through, it's free from something. Certainly free from gluten, but a lot of times, hey, we want this to be tree nut free, or we want this to be corn free, et cetera. And so that's the primary inquiries that we're receiving. And just from my background, I started Beefine Foods 10 years ago, and that was not started with seeing all the companies selling their getting big sales to big companies at that point, but certainly was after I started, it started to get all the big ideas of, hey, this guy that was next to the booth with me at Expo West sold his company for $60 million. I'm going to expect the same thing. Certainly that was the environment, and as people have mentioned, that's those days are probably over for quite a while. So I started the company with my brother-in-law making food out of the back of a restaurant's kitchen, and without knowing anything, and so about food production at all. So certainly have seen and experienced amazing amount of learning curve, and have a lot of knowledge for people who are just starting into this business, to help them from going really small to the upper end of small to mid tier, which happens to be sort of our focus for customer bases, small to mid tier sized companies.
Good stuff. So I want to jump in. I mean, obviously, the finance environment, capital markets weigh on product development and how each of you go to market. So I'm wondering, to what degree being bankable today as a product idea weighs on the shift that we're all hearing and talking about, this notion of comfort, of familiarity, of simpler ingredients. Companies like there were companies like Media and others who really pushed the envelope on that, and there seems to be a little bit of a pendulum swing back. So is it all about financing now? Is it all about selling and being able to sell an idea, and those safer innovation glide path is more bankable, or are they simply following consumer trends in terms of the type of innovation that we see going to market? Anybody want to lean in on that? That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that real quick, Bart. I think 2 thoughts. One is that I do think, we've talked a lot about safe, comfortable innovation, and I just wanted to add that I don't know that I think that will always be a factor of successful innovation to a certain extent. But I agree with Jeff that there's always going to be room for truly breakthrough innovation. Right now, like this year, maybe not the year for that, given the political and economic forces at play. But I do want to just kind of give that call out, because Fresca was built on innovative products, and I still am a firm believer in innovation. So I do believe that there's a time and a place for that innovation work, and I do agree that there's a niche for it. Just don't expect scale, like Jeff said. But also that there are always going to be those surprises that come through and do make it big. So don't want to be completely discouraging everybody on the call around innovation. And as far as product development and financing, I think from our perspective, like I said, we have a whole innovation side of our business where we do offer product development services. And Fresca has always been a product developer that is very focused on long-term profitability. So when we do product development, we build out pricing models from as early as possible when we're doing just benchtop development that show, here's what the MOQ rough estimates, right? Because it's early and it's always going to change over time, but here's a point in time estimate of what all of your raw materials are going to cost. And here's if you're running on a system of X scale, what you can expect for tolling. Because we have always realized how important it is to give brands that visibility to long-term profitability. I will say that not all product development firms do that, and not all entrepreneurs do that, and have that level of discipline around understanding your COGS. So I think that is something that we've always done, but have found more valuable, and have found more customers and clients asking us for in recent years, because investors, retailers, brands are all paying more attention to their margins and their path to profitability. So I just emphasize that that's Fresca believes that's always been very important, but I think it is more important now than ever. And the last call out on that is that profitability doesn't always have to happen day one. In fact, it's unrealistic to expect that, as all of our entrepreneurs know. But the path to get there is really critical, to know that you might be profitable once you hit this volume threshold. Once you can get your MOQs down to this amount, we often provide tiered pricing models that kind of shows how tolling can drop over time, how raw material costs can drop with volume. So understanding just some of those mechanisms, I think, is really important these days.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe another way to ask the question is, this is an industry sector that's always been known for innovation. It's been your calling card. So do capital markets now change what your calling card becomes? Is availability to capital the end of the innovation ethos in the food sector here?
I think it's a good question. I hear myself, like with what I said earlier, sounding exclusively capitalist in the regards of the natural foods industry, because I came in, working for the founders of the industry, Steve Demos and Mark Retzloff. I worked with Steve Hughes for a decade and a half. And it was about building a business that can be sold for an enormous amount of money. There are other ways, right? There are fiercely independent companies like Dr. Bronner's, or traditional medicinals. I just I find it hard to really understand how you can manage a business that is not working towards a transaction that is going to pursue a slower growth model and be self-sustaining. If you're 20 million bucks in revenue and you're making a 35% gross margin and a break-even EBITDA, it's just not going to work over time, because there's not enough money to fund the organization. And so what the model that I've operated inside of, and I think somewhat by default have ascribed to, is that we need to grow, we need to be profitable, we need to hit meaningful levels of EBITDA. And then we had to raise money. And as soon as you take a check, you're for sale. So the alternative path, the brand that's born at the Boulder County Farmers Market that wants to remain fiercely independent, that can work. I joined Beryl Stafford at the end of 2015. She was doing $7 million in revenue, and she had $1 million in EBITDA. And she was tired as hell. She had no employees. She did everything herself. There was nobody in sales, literally, and nobody in marketing. She had like 3.5 employees outside of the crew on the bakery shift. And so she was like, I'm done. This is so friggin' hard. And I'm on the road all the time, demoing and whatever. It's kind of like, I think about the music industry, and how do you become a full-time musician if you don't go big, right? Like, I'm sure many of us on this call know musicians that are good, that were with a good band, but they never got to Red Rocks, right? And so what does that look like on the long term? They're doing what they love, and they're bringing something really valuable to the world, but if it doesn't have the right economics behind it, it's just that's a big question mark. Like, we are dependent on the financials of our business and or by external investment in one way or another.
Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, I agree. And, as TJ was talking, I was thinking through this because we've certainly seen a renewed and intensive focus on EBITDA as being one of the driving considerations and influences for raising capital. I think, if you're a small brand or a younger company, it's really hard to demonstrate that out of the gate, which obviously presents a bit of a challenge and a chicken or the egg, type question of how do you raise if you don't have the numbers, and how do you get the numbers if you don't have the capital to grow? And I think, at times like that, you might have to become a little more innovative in how you look to raise capital. I think, most of us being entrepreneurs, having gone through this process, you go through your standard raise of friends and family, you look for angel investors. Another option that can bear fruit, and something that we've done, is look to other food companies that are already in the market, have a particular product, it might even be a commodity. A lot of these bigger companies, especially if they're private, often have an investment arm where they are looking to deploy capital into smaller organizations where they might see an opportunity to expand their own business by becoming a supplier to that small brand. If they see that there's a runway for that company to really take off. And so that's an interesting approach that we've followed, because we actually don't have any relationships with venture or private equity at this point. And all of our raise has been through either a private food company or through our traditional banking relationships. And sometimes you have to employ a combination of strategies, and it requires a little extra legwork because you have to find these organizations that are out there that might be interested. But often what you gain by partnering with another existing CPG company or supplier is they're going to provide you a lot of strategic direction, right? Chances are they're going to put someone on your board for sure, but they do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of relationships with the retailers that are out there, and they provide a level of experience as well as insight that you might not always obtain through a direct, type of venture or PE type relationship. But I agree with everything that Ali and TJ were just describing, and we've certainly seen, EBITDA kind of rise to the top as being really almost the first consideration. It's like, yeah, you have a nice product. Do you make any money, producing and selling it? Do you have margin? And that's certainly true of the traditional banking relationships, especially. That's pretty much what they're focused on. Everything else is just, the buy story. So it is tough, but I think that's where, as a smaller company, you really have to start thinking very creatively about ways that you can raise money so that you can grow your brand and hopefully find the right relationships, whether it's a co-man or self-manufacturing, to grow your business.
And I wanted to jump in on that, but wanted to give Ben or Jeff an opportunity to comment maybe on this notion of innovation giving way to funding and the difficult capital environment. Ben?
Yeah, well, and also Jeff, it's so great to see how your journey's evolved when our paths crossed so long ago. I think Ali nailed it. This is a super conservative environment. It's very risk adverse across not only, I think, the capital markets, but also the retailer environment. Not only with like the consolidation of, or what's trying to happen with Kroger and Albertsons, but also just seeing even within Whole Foods how I feel like the kind of like far out there, innovations are not being accepted or not being explored as much. And I do think that the capital markets are also dictating that as well, because folks have a lot of PTSD and a lot of apprehension to put money behind these brands that are not going to get scale most likely, and or have a successful exit. And so I do think that does put a pressure on innovation, or the ability for innovation to really come to market. But it's certainly the most risk adverse environment I've seen since I've have been in this industry.
So I wanted to move we have a lot of small companies that will watch this program, small startups, small businesses. And I want to get to this notion of buy versus build on the production side. We have an interesting mix of self-manufacturers here and co-manufacturers. Are there any differences in the ecosystem or that distinguish product development today that would provide a safer path or an alternative path that might not have existed 5, 6, 7 years ago? Is co-manufacturing more of an option now than it was? And can co-manufacturers help bring products to market in a way that they haven't before? And Jeff, I'll tee you up. I mean, that's obviously a softball question to a co-manufacturer. I mean, you provide an option for a lot of small companies. On the innovation side or product development side, just give us an idea of what an ideal customer is walking through your door today.
Well, the ideal customer is a bit of a unicorn in that they have product already nationwide distribution, are well capitalized, and we just pick up and hit fast volume right away. But to tamp it down a little bit, somebody who's already experienced producing their product in some fashion. If a person, a small company, small new brand comes to us and says, we want to make this product, it's never been made before. That's a whole nother scale of R&D versus, hey, at least I went through my kitchen in my house and have developed, I've done 50 different versions of this, and I think this is the way to build it. At least have some experience of how this product can be made. So that's kind of an easy one. The other is if you've got to have some form of capitalization to get this product off the ground. So people really need to understand a 2 or 3 year pro forma of their financials and what it's going to take to do a small launch. And so we're a good sounding board for looking at those, but anybody building out their financial model for a few years really needs to get that battle tested with some other people already in this industry who can show like this is minimum amount of cash you need to have. So production readiness, some sort of financial readiness are keys for anybody walking going to talk to us for us to have a meaningful relationship to go forward. Yeah, so those are the two big items for me.
Right. Allie, I'm sure you've been with Fresca on this journey where you were doing a lot of product ideation with brand ideas who came through your door 5 or 6 years ago. In fact, you were hired to at some level monetize those services. So how's the game changed for you for clients walking through the door today?
Yeah, I mean, definitely what Jeff was just saying about the ideal customer being a brand who understands what it takes to launch a new product resonates big time with Fresca. And we're more of a mid to large scale manufacturer these days. We've kind of outgrown ourselves when it comes to working with small brands, even though that's part of our history. We have built our systems in a way that one run of bars makes 100,000 bars in one shift. So we're on that larger scale, and working with larger brands is different, but we still face some of those same challenges, Jeff, of brands understanding the cost of innovation. It is expensive, and it's time, and it's resources. And I think sometimes that there's this expectation that because you're working with a co-man, those costs go away, but they don't. It's just, you're just outsourcing that work. So no matter what, somebody has to spend the time to commercialize a product, especially when it comes to new innovation that's never been done before. But even if it's just a line extension, there's cost to that, unless it's a perfect plug and play cookie cutter, something we're already making to a T, in which case that's more private label. But what Fresca believes in, and what we've always how we've always worked is that our brands own their formulas. Which means that when we get so many inquiries of like, what do you have off the shelf? What do you have that we could just put our label on and make? And the answer is very little, because all of our customers own their own formulas, as it should be. I'm a big proponent of brands owning their IP. But that means that we don't have a lot of off-the-shelf innovation. So I think there's this disconnect of sometimes working with a co-man, meaning they're going to take care of all of it. And we do take care of a lot of it, but there are sometimes costs. There's costs to trial, there's costs to commercialize, to get new plate costs for packaging, new packaging designs. There's all these unexpected expenses that not all brands are aware of. So it's really helpful when you have somebody, to Jeff's point, who understands all of those costs to launch and scale a product. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Let's get a brand perspective. TJ, Greg, if you were a small company today, an entrepreneur, had a little traction with a good idea, what would you be looking to do? Would you try to pursue a self-manufacturing strategy or a co-man strategy? Give us your perspective on reaching that point as a small company, and what weighs on that decision.
Sure, I'll jump in, TJ, first, but from my perspective, I mean, honestly, so our history is that we never outsourced. We started with self-manufacturing and grew the business following that track. And having experienced that, honestly, I think my personal opinion would be to co-man in our earlier years. Manufacturing, as I think everyone on this call is aware, is incredibly expensive, and it requires a lot of capital, and it's a never-ending investment. And sometimes it might make sense to invest in used equipment or a facility if you really have a clear line of sight as to your growth plans. But I think one aspect that co-man really offers an entrepreneur is validation of the product and your margins. And if you are able to work with a contract manufacturer in your early development years, and this is post-launch, but once you get out there, you should be able to scale the business if you have the right partner and really have a proof of concept that would either then give you the confidence to go out, raise capital, and then build out your own plant, or potentially remain solidly as a co-man type brand where you're outsourcing it. But I do think there's inherently a little less risk in your formative years to outsource that requirement, especially if you have a manufacturing intensive process, which we do. We were just very fortunate in that we had unique access to family capital specifically that wanted to pursue that direction. But I would say that is very much contrary to the conventional wisdom out there. And now, having gone through that, at times I wish that we had gone through a contract manufacturer again, so we could really fine tune our margins and our process and work with some experts who understand manufacturing at a level that we didn't understand in those early years. So that would be my preference, and I'll let TJ answer for his perspective.
Yeah, really helpful. TJ?
I think it's a complex question. Ellie said a half an hour ago that taste and simplicity and value are the attributes that drive consumer adoption and repeat purchase. And I know that to be true just from doing A&U's attitude and usage studies with consumers. It has to taste great. And at Boulder Brands, we were an innovation machine. And that innovation is not around anymore. We found co-manufacturers. We were very fast to market. We expanded into a lot of categories. We picked up a ton of market share, ton of distribution, ton of revenue, and it was very short term. I concluded at the end of being at Boulder Brands for 6 years that the only products of the literally hundreds that we were making that were coming into my house for me to share with the family were what we made. were what we manufactured. There was a real distinct difference between the stuff that we made and the stuff that we co-manufactured. And it's because the stuff that we made, we had a deep orientation to the product, and we thought about it on a far more intimate basis. And that was, for me personally, why I was attracted to Bobo's, because Beryl was a maker. It started in her kitchen, and then she shared all these really shitty commercial kitchens, with Justin and Phil Anson, and then eventually got into her own facilities. It's way harder to self-manufacture, and there's just so much more that you have to keep track of. But if it is ultimately about taste and it's about the quality of the food, if you're going to create something that's going to be long-term sustainable, the product has to kick ass. And when I think about like what I've purchased at a grocery store for 5 years or for 10 years that I still love, I'm just going to guess that those are products that the brand's making themselves, because they're putting all that care into it. And at Bobo's, Mike, that was our making the product is our ethos. We used to pride ourselves on everybody in the company had oats on the bottom of their shoes because they were spending time in the bakery, and we're thinking about the product all the time. Now we have very successful external manufacturing partnership right now, and it helps us figure out like it helps us solve the unpredictability of our growth. Kind of what Greg was speaking to, like the last 4 years, really like the key work stream is like, how do we forecast accurately and figure out the capacity to match that and getting that tied right. And if we can establish external manufacturing, then we just have that much more flexibility. And for us, the external manufacturing comes a lot later. And it is in a deeper partnership. Like we need external manufacturers that are going to make it like we make it and are going to partner in a way with us where our team's going to be in their facility, certainly helping, not just like watching like police, but it's a partnership, but it starts with how we do it internally. And then if ultimately what we were saying earlier, if you have to have EBITDA, if you're working with a co-manufacturer, even the best collaborative partnership with the best economics, you're giving up, 7 to 10 points. And you're going to be lucky if you ever get to 10% EBITDA in the first place. So you kind of got to make it internally, I think.
Good place just for me to pause just for a second. If there are any questions from those who are viewing, now's a good time to throw them in. We'll get back to them. Ben, I wanted to bring you in and have you talk about this notion because, you had looked at your space, I believe, a short time ago, and felt like given your expertise around gluten-free pasta and your production in a gluten-free environment, you thought you might co-manufacture. Where's that journey now? Give us an update on and a perspective on your take, which is, I think, a very interesting one on self-man versus or build versus buy.
Yeah, I think for us, that was birthed out of some of the leveling off of our growth during or post COVID, I'll call it, and looking for other ways to fill up the plant and bring revenue in. Luckily, due to the success of these biscuit pucks and cookie pucks that we're making internally at our plant in Arvada, we haven't had to, go out and look for either other brands or private label opportunities to fill the plant back up. So that's been, really encouraging. But I think, TJ nailed it in the sense that there's so much love and care that goes into a production facility with the right leadership in place and the right vision. And that absolutely is also, I think, in the secret sauce with the right co-manufacturing relationship. We do also use co-manufacturers for our frozen pizza business, and have since the beginning. And we've, been through, I'd say almost a handful of different co-manufacturers on that front. And it's, partnership there is a tremendous amount of value that can be unlocked in speed, sometimes in scale. But to TJ's point too, you are going to give up, you're going to leave something on the table there, which again is just kind of the fixation, I think, of a lot of these strategic acquirers and PE groups that are looking to buy brands at scale, 100 million, 200 million plus, with really nice EBITDA.
Craig, I just wanted to maybe finish with you on that question, the question of co-manufacturing. You're obviously a self-man in some of your stuff, and you want to talk about your other production plans?
In terms of what aspect, Bart?
Co-manufacturing.
Oh, so I mean, we do co-man for other brands, yes. It certainly is it's a more recent addition to the company. And it was kind of born out of the pandemic, to be honest. When we saw that big hit in our category, we had to become very creative very quickly and find ways to utilize our plant, which is really designed for high volume manufacturing. So we have identified a handful of brands that honestly had product in the market already. So these were not startups looking to launch a new item, but were already out there, but that needed some type of specialized manufacturing process that we were a good match for. And we were able to work out, a relationship and an agreement with them. And now they are part of our mix, which is actually kind of nice because we manufacture for our own personal brand, we manufacture under private label, and we manufacture as a co-man. And so we kind of have three legs of the stool that we've developed. And we're looking to, find ways to continue to expand, all three of those divisions of the company. The key for us is obviously scale and utilization of our plant. And we're going through, in fact, starting today, we're going through a upgrade of our facility where we're expanding internally. And I know TJ has been through that many times. I'm sure Ben has. And it's, it's a stressful process to go through, but I think having some diversity, at least in terms of our revenue stream, and having multiple partners that we can work with has been beneficial for us. And even though I had mentioned in our early years, I wish we would have maybe outsourced some of our original production, I'm firmly in the camp of self-manufacturing once we have reached this scale now, because I agree with what everyone has said in terms of the care and the attention to detail that you really have to apply to your process on a daily basis in order to put out the highest quality product possible. And that's something that certainly all of our retail partners pay attention to. And as we look to continue expanding, especially with these private label and co-man agreements, we have to host those buyers and those decision makers on site, and they want to see, feel, and touch, everything at our facility to, feel confident that we are the right partner for them going forward. So it certainly has long-term benefits to be in this manufacturing space.
And by the way, I just want to thank all of you for giving us a peek into your business. Sometimes these are uncomfortable conversations. Just the transparency is incredible. I think if you look over into the beverage sector, co-manufacturing is going to become, just by way of an imperative, more of a growth market. I mean, we have tons of brewers who, with excess capacity, looking to co-manufacture, develop new products or co-manufacture. So certainly this discussion around co-manufacturing, I think, is very important. Co-manufacturing to me, as I got into the market back in 2013, I saw that sector or saw those services as such a catalyst for this market. So anyway, thanks for everybody. I think we're going to kind of wind up here, Barb, unless you have something else or the folks have anything else that they want to add.
I wanted to add something, Bart, real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Specifically to contract manufacturing, one thing that has changed over the last several years, I think, is access to different co-mans around the country and the ability of small companies to identify and locate those potential partners. There's one resource I'm familiar with I just wanted to throw out there called Partner Slate, which I believe is based in Denver. It is basically an online platform for matching small brands with contract manufacturers. You can go to their website, check it out. I don't have a lot of experience using the site myself, other than I've been on it. It looks like it's fairly robust, and it might be a good resource for individuals who are looking to find a manufacturing partner.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've heard of Partner Slate. We definitely aware of them. I also want to give a little bit of a plug to Colorado Proud. Coming out of the first co-manufacturing summit, we made it a priority to kind of help Colorado Proud build out their co-man directory, their local and regional co-manufacturing directory. Sometimes I think the preference is to look for partners that are local or regional that can help you. Partner Slate is a really nice national asset, and I think they're doing great things, and I think they're going to continue to grow. But Colorado Proud also has a directory that they post online. So if you're looking for a local or regional co-manufacturer, we've done a lot of work the last 6 months to try to add value and augment that resource. So definitely contact me, bart.taylor@mossadams.com, or Barb Howe at Colorado Proud. You can find them at coloradoproud.com. And Barb, you might weigh in on where that directory is. But we're looking to add more value there, and to long term to highlight co-manufacturing as a statewide resource. We have Jeff up in Loveland today. Boulder County is kind of the epicenter of the co-manufacturing world, in some ways, the local world. But there's a new company down in Montrose in the Colorado Outdoors campus called Flow State. Mike Flynn's standing up a co-manufacturer to help brands in Southwest Colorado. Trisco Foods is a company down in Colorado Springs, and there are a couple co-mans in Colorado Springs that brands there can tap into, but Trisco is just beginning to build out a co-manufacturing capability that I think will be pretty impressive. I was with Peter a couple of weeks ago. So to the extent that we can help connect local brands with local co-manufacturing, consider us an asset, and I'm sure everybody on this call today is more than willing to lean in and help you find resources or continue this discussion around build versus buy, which I think is an extremely important one. So with that, Barb, anything else to add? I want to just thank all of our guests today, and buy back some time or give back some time to everybody, if that's okay.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you all. Great discussion, Bart, and to all the speakers, thank you. And as Bart mentioned, if you want to see what we have so far, and we are working on it to make it a more searchable list, so bear with us. We're going to get there, but you can go to ag.colorado.gov, and under markets, under Colorado Proud, and there's a lot of resources. That's where our members go in order to find these types of resources. But we will get that updated, make sure. We're always looking to make sure we'll get all the people in there that want to be on there. I just want to thank everybody, and just one more chance. Does anybody have any questions, or would they like to say anything at all about co-manufacturing here in Colorado?
Time back is always a good thing.
That's right. Well, I want to thank you guys, and
thanks, guys. Appreciate you joining us.
And yeah, Ben, your biscuits are very good. So we all agree. I happen to love the pizzas the best, but the biscuits are fantastic. So
awesome.
Thank you all. And this will be available on ag.colorado.gov as well. And you can view it later if they'd like. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.